back, you ain't gonna touch me. You not gonna do nothing, you are not above me. I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. Well, you know, it's me and my only friends. And today we are joined by a legend in the game, Lee Jones. What's poppin', Lee? Oh, we got to get Lee a microphone.
Oh. Hello. Well done, sir. Blame Wapo.
Okay.
Running this
bit.
There we go. Who's in charge here?
We go back and forth every day.
Okay, cool. You know, I just wanted to start with first thanking you guys and congratulating you on everything you're doing.
Oh, thanks.
It's just it's so cool to see you bringing such positive, I will not say positivity, but positive energy and you know, it's a grind what you're doing, and I know it, and I don't know that people really appreciate it. It's so cool that y'all are doing this, and you're bringing all these cool people in.
We appreciate that.
And you're highlighting all the good stuff that's going on, and I mean, obviously pointing out the problems as well, but I think that what y'all are doing is amazing for poker, and I'm just super proud to be on.
We appreciate that a lot. We show we show up day in, day out, and it's hard.
It's been a learning experience for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and then I guess we talked about earlier in the car, people that get on the mic realize what it's like to be on the mic. It's not so easy.
Not so easy. Sometimes words blend together. Sometimes you miss a segue here or there.
Are you talking about theory conspiracies? Yo, I was dying in the shower. I thought about it when I was taking a shower. I was like, what the fuck did I say?
The fact that you were able to repeat it so fluently is terrifying.
Well, because I said it 3 times in the shower this morning. I was like, theory conspiracy theories. Theory conspiracy. Where the fuck did I do that?
Honestly, I think you just wanted to get it to a point where it sounded completely unintelligible.
Did you know that there's a word for combining 2 words?
I did. Somebody, only because I'm so guilty of it. I do it so frequently. And somebody told me what it is, but I don't recall what it is.
If you swap 2 words,
that's
a spoonerism.
If you interchange them, is a spoonerism.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's some really hysterical ones that just come up.
Okay.
But if you just basically combine 2 words, it's a portmanteau.
Okay, so the portmanteau is what I'm most guilty of, and somebody told me about recently on Twitter. For the longest time, maybe a decade plus, I'm gonna forget it now because I've trained it out of my brain, but I would combine disparity and disparage and come up with disparity.
What did it mean?
It meant disparity.
Okay.
But I refuse to acknowledge that word was a thing because I liked my new word.
Okay.
Which I don't even know why I felt the need to combine the 2, but I was there for it. And it was one of those things where it's like there's a How I Met Your Mother episode where they talk about everybody's blind spots. Okay. And the second that everyone becomes aware of it, it's like glass shattering. Like you're like, oh my God, you do that all the time. Like it's unbearable. And in the episode, the one was a loud chewer, and another one was always correcting somebody's speech or whatever. And that was one of those blind spots for me that whenever somebody was like, "Do you mean disparity?" And I'm like, I do.
Now that you mention it,
yes, mean disparity.
That's what I mean.
Which apparently I didn't even realize was a word until this very second.
So is a Freudian slip when you just completely change the word?
Freudian slip is when you make a sexual innuendo out of
anything.
Oh, and it has to be sexual.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Freud
that was
basically
Freud's thing.
Yeah, that everything was ultimately about sex.
Okay.
More specifically, sex with your parents.
Oh.
He was real big into the mother-father complex.
Although he did also say sometimes a cigar is just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, at some point you have to walk it back, right?
Right.
You know, you can only talk about dreaming about your parents naked for so long before you're just like, okay, this one phallic thing is just fine.
Yeah, right. Exactly. How did we get there?
Welcome to the pod.
Welcome to the tangents. Who were we saying was going to keep us off tangents? It wasn't Lee, was it?
No.
Okay.
No,
was it?
wasn't any of us.
No, you should have.
Maybe
No, it was
Chauncey.
Kev Math.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, we said we are going to have Kev Math in
Yes.
just to keep us from tangenting.
Kev Math's the arbiter of tangents.
Another shot. Speaking of people that are really doing it for poker, here's a shout out to Kev Math.
Oh,
Yeah, there's it's kind of ironic, and this is no slight at any of the long-standing traditional media sources in the space, but when you look at the people who have kind of been elevated to an authoritative position in this industry from the media standpoint, they're all independent. You look at the Ingrams, the Kev Maths, Polk to some degree, the vloggers, us. People are coming to get their news from members of the community much more so than an actual corporate entity, which is very strange.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, that's how we got 2016, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean yeah.
that's not to say that's a good thing, right? That everybody can be the news,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah. It's weird. It's kind of a double-edged sword because I do see it kind of like as a free market taking some sort of corrective action, even when you're talking about traditional mainstream media, right? Like, I personally don't really follow much in the way of political landscape, and Brian, I wish he was here because like he's religious too, but he watches an independent YouTube show. I think it's called like something Turks or
The Young Turks.
The Young Turks, yeah.
Very progressive, yeah.
Yeah, and that's taken over CNN for him.
Right.
And they seem to be like wildly popular. I think the challenge is that the only thing that holds them to a journalistic integrity is themselves.
Exactly. And that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of the nature of the free press.
Right.
Is that the only thing that you can rely, it's because there's no arbiter, then the only thing that you can count on is the organization. Whether it's the Washington Post or CNN or whomever else, like all you can count on is those people being true to their journalistic beliefs.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge both for traditional mainstream media in the past and whatever we want to call this new wave. Like for us, we're a podcast. Sure, we deliver things that may be newsworthy, and we deliver other things that like we believe to be true, but are largely based in speculation or opinion or whatever.
Most of the time, speculation.
Sure, but like we're not, we're not some major news outlet with a ton of resources available to us where we're doing journalistic deep dives and
fact checking and all that.
Yeah, so it's difficult, and
Instead, we have me.
Right. Wait. It's almost worse.
We have Conrad and Wikipedia.
That's almost worse.
We don't use Wikipedia.
So that kind of like makes it a challenge because like from our vantage point, it's like, well, we want to be entertaining, not like necessarily a news outlet. And I know like Norman Chad had reached out to us a few times and basically said, the way that you guys approach some things without proper due diligence or getting both sides of a story, it's not following proper journalistic integrity. And it's like, I understand where he's coming from because he's classically trained, and from his vantage point, it's like, well, you have this platform, so you basically are the news whether you want to be or not. And it's like, fuck, we didn't intend that.
Right.
Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to be an investigative reporter.
Right.
I'm happy to get my hands dirty whenever necessary, whenever it comes to like a cheating scandal or whatever the case may be, but I just want to be able to speak my opinion. That's the beauty of podcasts, right?
Right.
That's what propped Joe Rogan up. It's what allowed Tim Ferriss to become this major outlet for people who are trying to optimize. And like, that's the world I want to live in, is like just a massive disclaimer of like, hey, this is just what we think. Like, this is not necessarily going to be ran through Snopes or
no,
whatever.
I get it. But I mean, to Norman's point, it's an awkward situation because, I mean, it is really true that one day you wake up and people are getting their news from you. And now it's like, okay, do you have any kind of journalistic obligation? And I totally agree. I mean, you said, hey, we're a podcast. We never said that we were the news.
Yeah.
So please don't treat it. It's like the vlogger saying, I'm not here to teach you poker.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But I'm actually on Norman's side. And I took it to heart. Like, I tried to cross every T and dot every I. It's just, there's only so much you can do.
Right. Exactly.
But his point's very valid. Like, we had 175,000 views on our first video on the Robbie J. Lou thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, what, I doubt Poker News had 170,000 clicks on anything.
Right.
So it's kind of unfortunate. And we could create these layers where we're the mouthpieces and the people doing the hard work are the actual media sources, the Poker Newses, the poker.orgs, et cetera, but I don't think that the monetary incentive aligns.
Nope.
So it's kind of unfortunate. Now here we are, just the wild, wild west. It's weird that as technology advances, a lot of the systems that were created regress. Right? Yeah. And this is true at the mainstream media level too. We see that. Could you ever imagine in your lifetime that the New York Times was going to become a joke in regards to like the way people look at the credibility and its ability to report the news? I'm pulling them as one example. They're one of many. You can look at the Washington Post, a bunch of others. And it's not even that they're not doing their job. It's just like, I know I don't pay attention to that stuff really at all, but when the FTX stuff broke and there was, all of these allegations and seemingly paper trail aligned with Sam Bankman-Fried being tied into the New York Times and basically being able to control the messaging in some way, it's like, okay, well,
right.
Who do we trust then?
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing independent any longer. So yeah, I mean, that gets us here. now we just shoot the shit and hope for the best. When in doubt, it was the Conrad's fault. He was supposed to do the research.
Whatever.
I think that's the ultimate conclusion. Is everybody should just have a fall guy. Just internally hire a fall guy, and then you wash your hands of it. It's like, oh, misreported? Fucking Conrad, man. One of these days he's gonna get fired. You're never getting fired, buddy. Don't worry about it.
Not till the tab's paid off.
Good point.
2 lifetimes at this point.
Maybe 3.
Maybe 3. Let's talk a little bit about what you are into now. Well, first, I guess, let me give a brief history. This is not your first time on here, so hopefully some of the audience is at least familiar, but let me give a brief history of your major relevance to poker, which was you were the first poker room manager at Stars. Is that correct?
True story.
Yeah, so that was obviously a bigger deal than anybody in this room will remember because they were in the womb.
Landon, how old are you?
What year?
How old are you?
23.
24.
Ooh, he's aged.
Oh my God. You were like 4 when I went to work for Poker Star.
Yeah. You were 4 when I made my first full year as a professional. Man,
I'm sorry, pray continue.
That's so crazy to me.
Here we are now.
Here we are now.
Still hating it.
So yeah, Stars obviously wasn't the first to market, but they very quickly captured major market share after UGEIA. Is that right?
Well, okay, so the thing that really catapulted Poker Stars was that they had that Isai and his Russian programmers in Toronto had figured out multi-table tournaments.
Mm.
And Paradise and Party, and there was Poker Spot, and there was I can't remember the other ones, but they had not figured out multi-table tournaments, and they were doing essentially sit and goes.
Yeah.
And when Isai and his crew figured out multi-table tournaments, now you had bigger tournaments, bigger fields, bigger prize pools.
Yeah.
And that just, that really got them traction.
Yeah, it's funny. I started playing online in 2003, and it's really hard for me to remember what the original Party Poker lobby looked like. I was playing $5 sit and go, so like I don't really remember. But I don't feel like it was long after that I was playing MTTs on there. Maybe.
Well, I mean, I think
2004-ish?
that once the MTT problem was solved in one place,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, okay, one, this problem is somehow tractable because they did it,
right.
and two, their USP, unique selling point, is just humongous. And so it's like, if you didn't have MTTs, like you were essentially, it was just a question of when you were done.
Yeah, we saw that with a lot of different online poker inventions throughout the years. Fast Fold or Rush Poker on Full Tilt.
Yeah,
I think Full Tilt was first to market with Rush.
Yes.
And then Stars created Zoom. Right. Same thing with Reentry.
And by the way, I remember when Full Tilt created Rush, and it was all hands on deck at PokerStars.
Yeah.
To create Fast Fold for that very reason.
Yeah. I can imagine. It was a awesome format when it first originated. Now it's probably a dead one or a dying one, just because the strategy can be kind of so perfectly implemented. But I mean, Stars was a huge mover in the pre-Black Friday days, and honestly, kind of the only survivor whenever you look at post. Party's still around, but they had two like major events that really kind of crippled their market share. The first being the decision to leave America after the UGIA because they were publicly traded.
Exactly, yeah.
And then the second being Black Friday, of course, which the whole reason they chose to leave America to begin with was so that they could come back into the American market legally due to being a publicly traded company and like, you know, making good with the government, et cetera, et cetera. They made their way back, but like in kind of smallish fashion. I think they're only in New Jersey.
Also in Michigan.
Okay, so they're all in the independent markets.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're in Pennsylvania.
Not in any of the shared pools.
How do you know that?
What do you mean?
Like
Wikipedia.
The party is in Michigan.
Because our roommate Corey goes to Michigan and dominates those streets.
Yep.
Oh, okay, there you go.
He just kind of goes there to collect 5 figures and comes back.
Yeah. It's a nice trip home.
That's
It's a good life.
That's one way to make your living.
So is it shared between Michigan and New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay.
They
That's right. They shared liquidity like the first of the year, I want to say.
Right.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. But not here yet, which I was unaware of.
I know. I wish we could get Michigan already.
Well,
Corey doesn't.
Well, so the thing is,
Michigan is still isolated for WSOP.
Yeah.
or
they're with Jersey, right?
No, Michigan is isolated
Just
for
all by
WSOP.
itself.
Everybody's isolated for WSOP except for New Jersey and Nevada.
Yeah.
I believe Party is also. I think they are mixed with New Jersey now, also
Yeah.
for
yeah.
Michigan.
Yeah, because they don't exist here.
Yeah,
So if Party ever opened here, they were supposed to open
9 years ago.
well, like 2 years ago. Like I think it was like May during COVID, and then COVID set it back, and then I think they were supposed to open the following year. Had more setbacks. But honestly, this market's so small.
They need a hosting casino, right? Like a live
Yes.
venue.
I think they do.
Yes,
I mean, I know
everybody
New Jersey does. I
yeah.
don't know if
Yeah,
Nevada's the same
they
way.
do, but I thought they had ties with someone. Who are they tied with? They're tied with Borgata, and yeah, they're MGM, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
yeah,
MGM.
yeah, they're MGM.
So they just can do it, but haven't yet.
Correct. But
unsure
I
why.
understand dragging your feet a bit in Nevada because the market's small.
Right.
So like getting to launch isn't as big of a deal as upkeeping.
Yeah, I
what
think
you already
that's
have.
why. I think that's why PokerStars never came into Nevada.
I thought it was a
Because-
licensing issue.
No, well, they basically there was a bill in Nevada that basically was like might as well be the anti-PokerStars in Nevada bill.
It's called the bad actor.
Bad actor.
Yeah, but it was essentially written in such a way to
Bingo.
essentially laser target PokerStars.
Gotcha.
But then there was a penalty box period, but that penalty box period is well over.
Okay.
But I guess PokerStars just decided just wasn't even worth the trouble for the market here.
I know that they're pouring a lot of resources into California, as is WSOP and everybody else at this point. I
I was
imagine.
part of the PokerStars effort in California in 2016, 2017.
Wow. Imagine
Thereabouts.
having shared liquidity with California.
Imagine California.
California has more people than all of Canada, I believe.
From
Yeah.
what I understand, the major holdup is twofold. One, they don't have gaming jurisdiction, so they need someone like Nevada to come in and oversee it. but they don't want to share the liquidity, because they don't want any of the money leaving California. They're broke.
The big trouble in California is the tribes have enormous power over all gaming in California.
That's kind of the same in New York too, right?
And well, I don't know New York. I just know that in California, because I was part of a whole team that was out here we were in Sacramento 2 or 3 times, trying to get bills passed.
This is a bit of a side, but
Wait a minute, are we doing a tangent?
Yeah.
Just checking.
Is Thunder Valley a full casino?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about Northern California is so different than Southern California? Because like Hustler, Bike.
No, but I mean,
these places
there are full
casinos.
casinos in Southern California. Verona, Morongo.
Okay, so they're all tribal.
They're all tribal.
And then these other places are card rooms that are opened under a different sort of set of rules.
Under the California Card Club.
Okay.
And why are they allowed to have like Baccarat then?
Because it's a card game, I think.
Who?
Like the Bike.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we do a tangent on California gaming law?
Yeah, go.
So California does not permit house banked games.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So if you're playing blackjack here, it's your money against, Caesar's money.
Mm-hmm.
But California specifically doesn't mention that, and that's why California's had poker for so long, because it's all the players playing against each other.
That's also why they couldn't police the Postle situation when it came to cheating, because the only thing that they can oversee is if the house is doing something. They don't care about player versus player.
Okay. All right. So the games that you see that are in like the Bike and Hustler and places like that are what are called California games. As a matter of practice, you see basically nothing but Asians playing them.
Mm-hmm.
But what they've done is that they are, in theory, being player banked.
Right. Well, there's one person in particular who started a business who does this. They're
called a corporation. And, and that person's income must just be completely unimaginable.
He's actually the owner of Champions Club in Texas.
Oh, really?
It's Stanley. Man, I'm mad at myself for not remembering his last name. I keep wanting to say Choi, and obviously that's not correct. Yeah. So basically, he's been player banking for years. He created a business or a corporation around it. Goes through all the Southern California card rooms.
Well, he's in the Northern California card rooms too, and you see the guys or gals sitting at the table with just tens of thousands of dollars in front of them.
Yeah.
And they're basically going to bank any action.
Oh my God! I never realized this was the reason why. I never put 2 and 2 together, but that makes so much sense.
And the banker has an edge.
Yeah, they make a small amount on the edge, right?
Yeah. And in theory, any other player can say, "Oh, I want to be the banker now."
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a minimum that they have to put up or whatever. But I mean, players playing those California games are just getting wiped out, because not only do they have the edge, are they up against the edge that the banker has, but they pay a fee to the house.
Right.
So it's just a money siphon.
Wow. California gets you in every way.
California does get you in every way. But the point, but anyway, that's the reason that they haven't been able to get online poker in California is because the tribes have such control over the whole gaming thing.
Mm-hmm.
And basically they said, if there's going to be online gaming, we're in charge of it. But, they have zero background in it. And they basically say, we want complete, absolute control. And we want pretty much all the money. And then the other player, in there is the racetracks. And the racetracks are basically dead, but somehow they still punch above their weight class in power. And so they're like, there was one bill that I saw that was, I don't remember the details, but it was something on the order of 9% of all online poker revenue was going to be sent to the racetracks.
What?
That was one of the bills. And it was like
why though?
Because political power.
Interesting.
And so obviously that was a non-starter. And so I honestly don't expect to see online poker in California in my lifetime.
Yeah, I kind of the same. I know a few people who are kind of behind the scenes and dealing a little bit with the lobbyist. It doesn't sound promising. I know why I wanted to say Stanley Choi, because it's actually Roy Choi who owns the company.
Okay.
So there we go. There's me taking two things and smashing them together per usual. I mean, obviously that would be the biggest win that I think we would see in the United States, because I imagine that nationwide liquidity would then come quickly after.
Oh my God! If California got online, that would be it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Honestly, there's a whole other side to this too that isn't going to matter. It's not going to have anything to do with the lobbying. It's not going to have anything to do with legalization or anything along those lines. But online poker is at this tipping point where tools are getting very advanced.
Yeah.
Technology is moving very rapidly. And for a new market like that to emerge, I mean, granted, the United States market still exists. It's just kind of a blackish, grayish market. But for it to emerge in an overseen sort of way where the government has their hands involved, I would hope that we would see some security upgrades. But the problem is I think that even like Nevada gaming is so antiquated. They're not really prepped to oversee something like this. I don't know exactly what the rules and laws and regulations are in place for someone like WSOP.com to operate or others in this space, but I can't imagine. I mean, we just recently found out that Ali's not banned on there. That's just sheerly insane. This guy, there's clear proof with a partner nonetheless. Like, they're partnered with GG Poker, who is the one who caught him and blacklisted him to begin with. It's like, for those two to not communicate and get them out, it's scary.
yeah. I mean, that's one of the problems that we're facing with online poker right now. Like California, anywhere else, is that the tools are getting faster and better. And realistically, at some point, I mean, we used to say this back in the PokerStars days. It's like, okay, ultimately it's the internet, and you just can't really know who's on the other end of the wire, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the tool argument, which is fair, there's also just been card sharing for so long, for so many years, for sure.
That's true.
So there's always been issues and problems with online gaming. It's just a matter of if it's still worth it. And from a company perspective, I'm sure it's just, if they can generate enough rake and make money off of it, why wouldn't they do it? Where they're kind of incentivized to have that sort of approach, less so the longevity standpoint of it all.
I think we'll see it come full circle, where when it was the Wild Wild West back in the early 2000s, you saw casinos and sportsbooks, more so sportsbooks than anything else, attached to every single online poker room, with the exception of the majors.
Right.
And I think we'll get back to that. I think at some point, not anytime soon, but somewhere down the line, DraftKings, FanDuel, these are going to be the biggest players in the space.
Yeah.
It's just a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I mean,
they just have too much money.
Sports betting just dwarfs
Right.
poker.
Right. And the first person to figure out a way to combine the two is just going to have the biggest room.
Yeah,
As in, like, DraftKings has a poker site,
yes.
like DraftKings.poker
Yeah,
or whatever.
It's already in,
They
it's
already
in the
have one.
works,
Yeah, they already have one in beta.
Like, all that stuff is already in the works. They're going to be the biggest players there are. Because
Yeah, instead of poker, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was just gonna say, instead of poker sites having this little, sports book off on the side, it's gonna be the other way around.
Yeah.
Like, they might just have, like, the DraftKings Poker Championship or whatever, and then have their own stuff going on. And then
There's a lot that they could do, too, to combine, like, daily fantasy with online MTTs.
yeah, you kind
all
of can, like, draft people, usernames.
All you would have to do is incentivize people to sign up days in advance so that they could create the player pool.
right,
And then
create
from
the
there,
pool.
you just get to do your drafts. And you could even do it in a way where it's like buying at markup, right? Like it's truly like the exact same thing. You create a free market where people are actually selling, and you can buy pieces of them, and then those prices get imported into a daily fantasy type of pool.
It all sounds so nice in theory, but then in practice, when it comes to the buying people, and then they're now incentivized to, like, cheat,
Cheat how?
card sharing.
Wait,
pools.
why are they more incentivized than before?
From an online standpoint?
Well,
Or do you
just
mean
in-
live?
I'm just saying, why are they more incentivized than they otherwise would be?
Well, I guess there's more money then, right? Because now you can just, like, win a DFS pool where you just pick you and your friends and you all just, like, share cards.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but
I mean, if it's live, it's not that big of a deal, right?
Yeah,
if it's for,
right,
like,
right.
WSOP, if it's for, like, a WPT and you want to, like, make lineups, but
yeah.
if there's room for people to do bad things on the internet, they're gonna do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems to solve.
Is it
for sure.
true that a company called Flutter owns FanDuel and PokerStars?
All true.
Yep.
And they own
What is Flutter?
And they own Poker News as well.
Mhm.
Oh shit.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
It's Flutter Communications, and it's out of east of England somewhere. I can't think.
Wait, did they also buy? Did they also buy the thing that Tony G owned alongside Poker News, the Fleshlight?
I have no.
Wait, what?
I want to know the package deal.
I have no idea. what
Tony
you're talking
G.
about.
Tony G used to own Poker News and also owned Fleshlight.
Based.
He is the starter of Fleshlight.
I don't know if he's the starter, but I think he had like
He's an investor.
I think he was an investor.
I doubt they're in that, and I don't know if you guys would know this, but Flutter is it's a British slang for betting.
Oh, I had no idea.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
For some reason, I always confused it with Shutterstock, like thinking it had something to do with media. No, not like I didn't actually think it was Shutterstock,
Yeah, I
but
gotcha.
I thought it was like something to do with media,
Yeah.
which made sense to me why they
But
own
yes,
Poker News.
Flutter owns PokerStars and Draft, whichever one it is.
It's FanDuel. Yeah,
FanDuel, yeah.
that's interesting. It's already in the works, man. Everything's in the works.
Yeah, it's all rolling. So what are you up to these days at poker.org?
Yeah, so I'm writing for poker.org, and since it's World Series time, we have the poker.org, the poker.org instant going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a cool thing, and I'm excited about it because it's not somebody standing around saying, oh, Landon Tice's pocket nines were beaten by some unknown's queen jack suited.
Right.
It's more interesting. It's basically like you can follow what's going on at a higher level with more interesting people stories and stuff like that.
It's a little more personal, it seems.
I think it is more personal. The one I just saw yesterday was there's this couple, and they're in their 60s, if not 70s, and they're basically on a scavenger hunt to get as many selfies with as many big name players as they can. And it's really cute. And apparently scavenger hunts have their own vocabulary and lingo and stuff, and they've adopted all that vocabulary and lingo to chasing people around and like the guys like, oh yeah, we have our tent poles, and that's Daniel Negreanu and Josh Aria, and it's really cool stuff.
It's personable. It's cool stuff. It seems like there's a lot more like just stories about like just people in the community there.
Well, and that's like, to me, that's what poker's all about. And since Landon's here, I'll just like give my little speech about it. It's like, it's just a game, right? Like, I mean, it's a really cool game, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the greatest game there is.
Poker?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely best. But it's the people and the stories and the history, because every game has got its people and stories and history. But like, because poker is what it is, and because you can make money at it, and because it's been so frowned upon in the United States for so long, it has this really sort of seedy past, that the people and the stories that come out of it are just absolutely amazing. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the people and stories that we see coming out of the game, and that I like to think that poker.org is chasing around, are just much more interesting than the actual. I mean, yes, it's interesting that somebody wins $25 million or whatever the number is, but I think the side stories are often way more interesting. Like the story we did about the guy who's 100 years old in Florida that was at the Moneymaker Tour.
Oh yeah, that was great. And then
He won a side
tournament.
event, right?
Yeah.
He won a side event,
Yeah.
and like the people at the place where the dog track where the whole event was, they told me the guy comes in and like he plays all the dailies, and he'll put a couple of bullets into dailies, and when he busts out of that, like he goes downstairs and plays.
Sure.
Like, it's like, and I told him, I said, folks, one of these days that guy's just going to go like face down on the table, and that's it. And they're like, yeah, we're kind of prepared for that, but like, what other way do you want to go? Like,
Yeah, of course.
just die doing what you love. Right?
Yeah, I mean, poker has the underground aura for sure, just because it is kind of underworld gambling-esque.
I think that's changing a bit,
But
but
that's what I was going with that, is it's now kind of less seen as such, especially when it comes to the exposure and the math, and call it people that are consistently winning, proving that they're consistently winners. And
I think the same thing's
how they
true
do
of
it.
sports betting too, which is a huge aid in poker's image.
I guess let's just do algorithmic tools, right? Because most
people just don't think that it's bookies and street fights and getting your legs broken if you don't pay anymore, right?
As in, it's just do sports books.
Yeah, everything's automated. You can do it all online. You can bet in the casinos.
Wow, yeah, you just don't have to deal with people anymore.
You don't have
You
to
deal
deal
with
with
the
the
entity.
underground anymore necessarily.
Little baby Chauncey just wanted love.
He just wants a little love.
That's actually kind of funny because it's kind of like only the people that are losing don't have to deal with the casinos. I mean, like the underground stuff anymore. People that are winning sports bettors, they don't get to bet at casinos.
Yeah.
They have 46 cents limits.
They have to take on a lot more risk.
I heard from Brewer that he's done pretty well on DraftKings, and he had a bet that he wanted to put in. The max bet he was allowed to put in was $3.30.
Yeah,
That's insane.
I have a friend that's been betting props and for like strikeouts, and he can only bet like 50 cents now. It's only been like 6 days in or something like that.
Yeah. Hey man, they're not a $1 billion industry because they're not sharp.
No, it's true.
You know, they figure things out pretty quickly.
It's pretty sick. But
What is bro doing?
He's just hanging, man.
Look at him. He's just like,
He's ass out, you know. Jeez. Hot girl summer.
yeah, I don't understand.
You know, I heard Ed Miller on the Brocus's podcast.
Yeah.
And like, you know, he went full sports betting.
Yeah.
And after I heard him, I was like, I'm never making a sports bet again. I've never made a sports bet, but like if I ever thought I was going to make a sports bet,
Right.
that, you know, he basically was like, the books are totally sharp,
Yeah.
and the random sports bettor, you know,
drawing dead.
They're just taking a
doesn't
bath.
absolutely draw it.
chance,
And when we
yeah.
were at the dog park and we would watch these guys betting the horses, they are literally betting their birthdays and stuff.
Well, it's not even about the lack of knowledge with the bet. It's that the sports books are just nickel and diming you to death with the lines.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're just ensuring that they're making money on both sides and that no matter what bet you put in, you're losing.
Yeah.
So,
Going along the lines of some of these, I guess, interesting human interest stories that you're writing about, I know you're very passionate about getting Isai into the Poker Hall of Fame, and we are coming up on nomination time.
yep.
He was one of the finalists last year among a very star-studded list, and it makes me realize how big of a problem we are beginning to come upon as far as the Hall of Fame goes. So just real quick to run down this list. Lane Flack actually got the
He got in last year.
I was gonna say nomination. That's not the right word. He was the one who
He got the tap.
He was
inducted. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. I almost said indicted.
Oh God.
That probably too.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Which, you know, was a feel-good story. He passed away last year. That was who I personally would have voted for if I had the opportunity to. Not because I thought he was the most deserving of the list, but just because I think being able to memorialize somebody who probably is a borderline Hall of Famer anyway is kind of a no-brainer. But this list is it's hard to pick, man. And the issue is that with every passing year, it becomes harder and harder for these people to remain relevant. So they kind of have this very short window to get in, but it's only one person per year.
And I think that's probably the mistake. And we were talking about that before we went on the air.
Yeah.
That, you know, as you pointed out, when they first started doing this, there was like 200 people playing poker.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter that, you know, you pick one person.
You're putting in the 0.5%.
Exactly, and that's fine. But now there's, you know, 200 million people playing poker, and poker is humongous, and there's, you know, tens or maybe even hundreds of people that can reasonably, like, if forced to, I could probably come up with a list of like, you know, 50 people
Easily.
that you would look at and you wouldn't be able to just say, oh, don't be ridiculous
Correct.
about any of those people.
Correct. Easily. I mean, you know, Galfon is a year away from being eligible.
Right.
So it's like now once you start to go into that era, like it's just so this short list is Josh Aryeh, Lane Flack, Elke, Kathy Liebert, Mattisau, Lana Norman as a tandem, Mizrachi, Rass, Savage, and Isai.
And that was last year.
And so this was last year's list, right?
Yeah.
This is this is a really impossible list to even compare and contrast. Like, you have Isai, who was an operator. You have Savage, who's probably one of the best, if not the best, tournament director of all time. You have Lon and Norman, who are literally the voice of the World Series. And nobody has ever made a bigger impact on televised poker, in my opinion.
Yep.
That's not even getting into the player side of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And you can't even compare those three. They're not even the same. Operator, TD, announcers.
Yeah.
These guys can't be compared.
Right.
Then whenever you get into the player side, it's like you look at somebody like Mizrachi, and yeah, moving forward, he's probably not going to be a super relevant person to the industry. But he had a 15-year span where he was one of the most dominant players in all of No Limit Hold'em tournaments. Like, he won the Players' Championship three times.
Yeah.
You know?
3?
Yep.
Yeah. And then you have Brian Rast, who won it twice and is just like a master at all games. But again,
Also took himself against Timex.
right, yeah. The year he won the PPC, he actually booked like an extra 100% of himself against Timex.
And then you have one of the best.
Just called his shot. He's like, I think I'm underpriced. I'm just going to buy more of myself.
And then you have one of the best poker dads out there, Jeremy Osmus.
What? What are you talking
I was adding another one to the list.
Okay.
Conrad just wanted a nominee, man.
I want to nominate Jeremy.
I didn't know that Brian Rest had bet 100, had cross-booked 100%.
I don't know if it was 100%, but I know it was a big cross book.
I didn't know. I mean, because I never thought that Timex ever took the worst of it.
I mean, I think he had him at face, and Rast was just like, I'm really fucking good at all these games. Like, this is insulting. I'm just buying way more of myself.
Spite is a powerful motivator.
I remember we were playing the Ivy Room game pretty frequently back then, and he was just so confident. I was like, man, how could you not bet on this guy right now? This is incredible. But yeah, each of these people on the list, like, they contribute something very differently. Like, Josh Aria is probably one of the greatest gamblers that we've seen in this space in 20 years. Like, is he the best poker player that came through? Probably not, but like, that can't be the sole criteria.
Right.
Whenever we have this vagueness to who gets nominated. And, you know, same thing with Kathy. It's like, she's probably one of, if not the greatest female player of all time. And
Her first WSOP cash was 95.
right. And she's just still consistently out there
and
doing
she is
it.
still out there in that purple
Yeah,
sweatsuit,
and this
just
is no
crushing it, right?
And this is no slight against her, but it's like, if you put her resume versus Rast, it's like Rast just is going to dwarf her.
Right.
And now, whenever you start to get into the next generation, where you start to pull in the Durs and the Galfond, how can Liebert and Mattisau and these people who were so important to the last 20 years ever stand a fucking chance?
Yeah, there's a shelf life.
Yeah,
For sure.
your window's like 3 years, and
the
they only
point
put
is
one person in.
Exactly. You just have to. I mean, the clear fix is to put in more than one person.
Has to. I think at a bare minimum, we have to start at least segregating the different segments of the industry,
Right.
and at least giving a nom per, right? And then there could just be years where it's empty, right? Like, you know, if once Savage gets in and Jack and a few others from like the TD side or whatever get in, and we just don't have someone to nominate that year, that's fine.
Who is
Bring
in charge?
in another poker player. The people who are inducted. So it's basically ran and operated and voted on by the people who are already in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Can they make a vote on adding different subsections?
I imagine. So the first year, I think that there were 5 people nominated, inducted, and then every year after has been 1.
Right, because like if you look at other lists, there's lists for different subcategories of things, like call it a Forbes 30 under 30 type thing.
Yeah.
There's different subcategories of how you get.
But even the 30 under 30, it's not like one person.
No, that's what I'm saying.
30.
There's a,
Yeah,
there's a
right.
ton of them
Right, yeah.
for good reason. Like there's just a bunch of different people doing a lot of stuff at that time that should be recognized.
Hall of Fame stuff is very difficult because
What's it like for NFL, if you know?
I think it's 4 or 5.
Right, but it's not one.
No. It's definitely not 1. The difficulty between poker and sports is that sports never evolves so much that you could look at the achievements of the past and say that guy would suck now. Even though, like, in my humble opinion, I don't think Babe Ruth would compete in modern day era. It doesn't fucking matter because he was so dominant in the era that he was born in that no one would ever slight him now, right? You know, you can look at a guy like Pete Rose and you could say, sure, the 70s were a bit watered down and everybody was on greenies and, you know, whatever, but like his achievements stand on their own.
A guy like Barry Bonds. Yeah,
Right.
we know he took steroids, but
Right.
you
who
know,
cares?
everybody was.
He's the greatest baseball player of all time. It's a no-brainer. But the thing with poker is that all you have to go by is money, and money inflates, and tournament buy-ins. You know what I mean?
Money
like,
through cashes, money
yeah,
through
it's like, you know, for a long time,
legacy.
Mizrachi and Mattisau were probably on the short list of the top 50 MTT earners of all time.
Or just players in general. And now you look back at that like,
Well, I'm just saying, if we're talking about money specifically,
yeah.
like they were for sure in the top 50. They might have been in the top 20. But then high rollers came in, and now they're not even in the top 200.
Now you can play a 250K where first is 4 million. And then it's like,
There will be somebody at the World Series this year that potentially has zero in earnings in Hendon Mob and passes me.
yeah.
And
for
I
sure.
have $4.5 million
Yeah.
over a career.
Not
right?
difficult at all, right?
Right. So it's just like, it's not really necessarily the measuring stick anymore. You know, Bonomo has 55 million or something like that in lifetime earnings. So you don't have the no-brainers that you had for decades on end. And that's a problem for specifically people like Savage and Isai, because though they're industry leaders and they helped really move the needle a lot and progress the industry forward, they just are not going to get the same favor from the voting panel, who's all players.
Right.
It's an interesting thing of keeping it exclusive, but at the same time including the people that need to be.
Yeah. Something obviously has to change, though, because the other issue that they're going to run into is that people are dying.
Yeah.
So there's only 79 to 2000 or to 2022. So you're looking at like less than 100 members.
Right.
And, you know, half of the, maybe not half,
Yeah,
but like
they-
at least
I
a quarter of them are gone.
I mean, realistically, there just has to be some kind of complete rethinking of the whole Hall of Fame thing.
Right.
And if I can kind of context switch here, and you haven't even mentioned your sponsor.
I know.
Okay.
I'm saving it for the end.
Okay. Well, I'll bring that. I'll just bring it back around. That the thing that is proximate in my mind right now is the WPT is actually honoring Isai
Yep.
with a Lifetime Achievement Award along with Vince Van Patten.
Mm-hmm.
And they because they're not handcuffed by one per year or whatever, they can just say, oh, here are these two people that we'd like to honor.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good thing, because like Isai's 75 years old. He's not going to be around forever, right?
Right.
And his relevance, I don't know how you can say that his relevance is going to decrease, because like everything that we do now.
It's not that it decreases, it becomes less in the forefront of anybody's mind.
Right.
And also, like, people are coming up to have no idea who Isai is.
Right.
Like, Landon would have no idea if it wasn't for this podcast, probably.
I mean, I'm still very blurry on like what he actually did.
Yeah, like we're never going to see Tough Fish get into the Hall of Fame, and that's a goddamn shame.
So Isai was working for IBM in Toronto, and he was actually playing at Underground Games with Daniel. And he was like, Isai is like, more than anything else, he loves poker. He loves poker the way we do. He is just a poker fanatic. And he was playing in these Underground Games, and he was playing on the current, clients, Paradise or, Party, whomever. And he said, oh, do you know what? We can do better than this. And so he decided he literally got a bunch of Russian programmers together in a room in Toronto and came up with this client, and that was PokerStars. And then they did the MTT thing. But and then PokerStars happened, and then UGIA happened. And the story about UGIA is when it happened, I'll never forget, it was October of 2006, and a bunch of us were in the break room at the PokerStars office in the Isle of Man. And Isai walks in and like gets a banana out of the fruit basket, and he's sitting there eating his banana. He just kind of like looks around the room at 4 or 5 of us that are standing there. He says, so, do you think we should leave the United States? And I was, that was sort of how he processes things. He just like vocalizes his thoughts and his questions. And, we're all just like, well, fortunately, that's well above our pay grade. But you know, and then ultimately they made the decision to stay. So that was one thing, Landon, that he did that was huge. But the thing that he did that was humongous was when Black Friday came and Full Tilt just evaporated and left, what was it, $300-400 million worth of player funds.
It's frozen.
Not frozen.
Well,
they didn't
non-existent.
exist. Yeah, there's a difference between frozen and non-existent.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Isai basically said, okay, and he worked out a deal with the DOJ where PokerStars would acquire Full Tilt and make its players whole. And the original proposal was that PokerStars would just, I mean, in 3 weeks, PokerStars reimbursed American players $115 million. And they basically had to have a negotiation with DOJ to like essentially turn on their, you know, their financial taps so they could move money back and forth. Mm-hmm. And they reached that agreement with the DOJ. And literally within 3 weeks, we had paid back $115 million in U.S. player balances. And then they negotiated with the DOJ and said, look, how about if we buy Full Tilt and all of its assets, and we will make all the Full Tilt players whole. And the DOJ said, yes, but we're not going to let you reimburse them directly. We're going to force you to pass it through this third-party entity. And I don't remember what the name of that entity was. But that's why the Full Tilt players had to go and essentially send in a form to some third party and get reimbursed that way. But basically, it was PokerStars' money that made the Full Tilt players whole.
Part of that was like negotiating down the bad actor clause too, right?
No.
It had nothing to do with that?
It had zero to do.
I thought it was like partly goodwill to...
It was, yes. It said that if poker was regulated in the United States,
mm-hmm.
PokerStars would have the right to apply
for
that.
Yeah.
And I don't know the details. I'm going to actually stop talking about it before I say something that's just completely wildly false.
Sure.
But I think what
we all do that.
Oh, well, I try to avoid it. You know, I've done enough of it in the past. I just try to avoid it in the future. But I think what really happened that messed that up is that there was never federal legislation
right
to legalize poker, and that's what everybody thought was going to happen. But in
mm-hmm.
fact, what happened was it started coming state by state.
Yeah.
And essentially, they got a DOJ opinion that online poker was, in theory, legal if a state regulated.
Right.
And so that's why it's been state by state, and that's why it's been so slow and so painful, and we haven't had shared liquidity yet.
Yeah. Same thing with sports betting.
Right, but that's why, and that's why the states could lock PokerStars out,
mm-hmm.
and they would find ways to lock PokerStars out. And that, by the way, is one of the reasons because, for instance, a lot of the California bills that came up found ways that essentially locked PokerStars out. Like they had a bill that said, okay, you can come bring poker to California, but if you stayed in the United States after UIGEA, you have a 5-year penalty box.
Yeah.
And PokerStars was like, yeah, not with our lobbying money are you going to pass that.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I mean, the bottom line is that without Isai, think about it. The Full Tilt players crater $350 million or whatever the number was.
Who knows what happens to online poker if Stars was not in existence at that time frame? Imagine it was just Full Tilt, and this whole Ponzi scheme comes collapsing down at the hands of the government. And moreover, like, you know, we can get into the whole backstory, but that Australian payment system, whatever. Okay, right? So say it all comes crashing down, and now there is no options because Full Tilt doesn't get back up and running.
Right.
Stars is, let's call it, non-existent. Maybe Party swoops in and becomes the potential saving grace, but I doubt it due to the way that they had already separated themselves from the United States market.
Yeah.
You know, they might have been there to capture the European market post Fallout. We could be looking at a totally different landscape right now.
Very much. Yeah.
And, you know, I could see a world where, you know, maybe, I don't know. I don't know because there's such demand for it. I feel like something would have came up. something similar to like what GG ultimately became or what ACR ultimately. Yeah.
But
it was tough sledding back then. People don't remember that 2011 to 2013 time frame of like everybody who was trying to figure out how to operate in the gray, right? Like Lock Poker and all these other small sites. Doyle's Room went down, became ACR eventually. Carbon Poker, yeah.
Yeah, how did Lock work out?
Right, it was just like, ultimately a lot more seized money is what ultimately came of it.
Seized, you keep using this. You use this word. I don't think you know what this word means. You say seized money.
Well, because that's the way it was presented to us as the public, even though, that wasn't the case.
The Lock Poker money evaporated with what's her name?
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Jennifer?
Jen. I know who you're talking
Jen
about.
Somebody.
I just can't think of it right now.
Look it up. Just put in the name Jen and
I didn't know
Lock
they
Poker.
went illiquid. I thought they
Yes, they went totally
she
illiquid.
just took off.
Jen Larson.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
My memory's not completely gone.
I didn't know that. I knew they tried to operate after Black Friday had ended, and I thought that the DOJ.
No, they went
kaput them.
They went upside down with their deposits, and Jen Larson disappeared with the money.
This is basically just rug pull.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rug pull. It's the
Theft.
old version of rug pull.
I mean, we see the same thing in crypto, more specifically the NFT space. Yeah. Like every day, there's a new Ponzi popping off.
Yeah. Bernie Madoff, he came up with an idea. Like people just copied it, right?
I mean, he did okay for himself outside of the jail time.
Right up until he didn't.
Yeah, right up until the jail time. Like he was kind of crushing it.
I was in middle school back then.
Of course you were, Landon.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think what the online market would look like were it not for ESI is, it's really hard to say. And the fact is that here we are with the two big players, ACR and GG.
Mm-hmm.
And is GG, can you play in GG in the United States?
No, they just got legalized in Toronto, and they're trying to merge with WSOP as far as I understand it.
But I mean, everybody's playing on ACR.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying anything bad about Phil. Presumably he's trying to run a legit business, but it's totally unregulated, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah.
That if something bad happens, there is no recourse.
Yeah, that's the thing that I feel pretty privileged to be in a spot where I don't have to play on these sites. I just have more action elsewhere, but it is kind of terrifying in the sense that everybody's dabbling in these gray markets, whether it's the apps or ACR or whatever the case may be.
Oh my God, the apps, Jesus.
Is it that bad though? I just mean it in the sense
it's worse. It's legitimately worse than what we went through between 2003 and 2010.
I agree with the sentiments. I also think most, when they're taking part in an unknowingly unregulated space, that these things could happen. And of course it's terrifying, but you made the choice to play.
I got to tell you, this is the most spiteful thing I'll ever say, but I hope another event happens tomorrow so you can feel it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to end up with 6 figures locked up, and you're going to go, how can I be so dumb? Like nobody actually knows the risk that they're taking on, or at least they don't acknowledge it. You just think your money's safe because it's been safe in the past.
Wait a minute, Landon, you have 6 figures on an unregulated site?
No.
No, but plenty of people do.
No, I 100% get that.
Yeah.
I also realize these things before bad things happen.
Maybe. I guess my
point is... At least a little bit, right?
My point is your ignorance is at least justified because you didn't go through the first event, but there are a lot of people who are just rinsing and repeating, not understanding that it's just cyclical.
I would never blame anything other than myself.
It's not about blaming.
I would never get mad at an unregulated site if that stuff happened. It's like, it's on me too.
Sure, but who cares? What it really comes down to is it doesn't matter what your emotions are whenever the bad event happens. What comes down to is how many people are acting responsibly, knowing that the bad event can occur. And I would say it's very few.
And the other thing is, it's awful for poker.
Terrible.
It's the constant, if people's awareness of poker is they read on the front page of whatever news outlet, here we are looping back again, but whatever news outlet they're reading is some, the equivalent of Full Tilt, evaporating $350 million. That's their awareness. You say, oh yeah, well, I'm a poker player. Oh man, your money's probably going to evaporate tomorrow.
Well, I think more so the narrative becomes online poker is rigged. which is something people already believe to be true. Like
right.
the
but
lay
it's
person.
but it's more than rigged. It's like the money is just gonna, it's just going to disappear into a Costa Rican darkness.
I guess that's what I'm saying is that they
Into the
believe,
void.
they basically already believe online not to be safe, and that message just gets doubled down on. I will say that I don't necessarily think that negative stories about poker are as bad as people believe them to be nationwide publicly, but in instances where it's a major party, like a major corporation, I think that that's a massive stain on us and does us no favors. But like when the Postle thing happened and we got on Sports Center and Scott Van Pelt was talking about it, I don't think that's a stain on poker, right? I think that was a demonstration of self-policing.
Yes.
And it got national coverage, which got poker again in front of people. And I think that that's a good thing. Even the Robbie J. Lou thing, where it became this human interest story of sorts. Right. I think these things, like, though they have a negative undertone to them, actually bring way more eyeballs in than push people away. But the Full Tilt, Black Friday, things where it's a massive entity that is in and of itself almost a separate marketplace collapsing, that's like FTX and crypto.
Exactly.
Yeah.
FTX is the thing.
And that's the perfect example to look to because it's just reflected in the price of the coins, right? FTX gets rug pulled, coins drop.
You're saying
we
Luna's
know
a
that
bad
it's
investment now?
Not the best.
Yeah.
Hey, you can buy low.
Yeah. There's always hope.
There's always hopium.
Or when when USDC actually depegged.
Right. That was a major event.
And by the way, I have a friend, because it depegged to about 90 cents.
Yeah.
I have a friend who basically watched and said, oh, this is too big to fail.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot let Silicon Valley Bank go under.
Yeah.
And so he ran out and just bought infinite USDC at 90 cents. And then waited over the weekend.
Yeah.
And then it promptly, whenever the FDIC said, or not FDIC, but whoever it was, SEC.
Yeah.
That we're going to make sure that the bank is okay.
Yeah.
It was FDIC. We're going to make sure that the bank is okay. And, USDC promptly repegged.
Mm-hmm.
And he made 11% on infinite money over the weekend.
Yeah, that was good for him on that situation. Shortly prior to that, though, was it you? It wasn't Tether, but it was one of the other stables. Depegged and went to zero. The one that was attached to Luna.
Yes.
I can't remember what
but
it was.
USDC was in a very different place.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that there were a lot of people who, when that depegged, were thinking the same thing, like, oh, 80 cents on the dollar, I can make infinite when this repegs.
Yeah.
And then it went to 70 and then 60 and then down to 30 and eventually zero.
This death spiral.
Yeah.
Scary.
Dangerous place.
Yeah, but I mean, just to put a bow on that, I just want to give a big shout out to Adam Pliska and all the people at WPT for stepping up and saying, yeah, Isai is the man, and everything that we're doing right now may not happen.
It's actually a big tip of the cap too, because Isai was a competitor. WPT was initially aligned with Party.
Yes, and actually, PokerStars, we did our first PCA. Our first 2 PCAs, 3 PCAs as WPT events.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, we had Linda Johnson, who I just saw walking through the poker room at the World Series. But yes, Linda came on the cruise, and then the first one that we did at the Atlantis in 2005 were WPT events.
Okay, and then it became APT thereafter.
And then it became
But it was always stars.
It was always stars.
Okay.
But yeah, basically, I don't know all the details. I wasn't involved, but basically, Stars and WPT got a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of the party relationship.
Sure.
And yeah, and as a matter of fact, I mean, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. Is that when Mike Sexton was on the cruise with us, he was the spokesman for Party Poker.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And here he was doing this PokerStars event, and every single interview I saw, public and private, no matter what he said, he was always super complimentary about PokerStars and the job that we had.
Yeah.
And here he was, the Party Poker spokesman. And the last day, I just happened to bump into him, and I thanked him for being so gracious and complimentary about PokerStars. We were the bloody competitors.
Right, yeah.
And he said, Lee, it's a big pie. There's enough for everybody to eat.
Yeah, that was a great way to approach things, especially back then, where the money was really infinite. And
well, but I mean, Mike just lived in a world of plenty.
Yeah,
and that's which is, and you and I have talked about this before about living in a world of paucity or living in a world of plenty. And Mike lived in a world of plenty. He said, "Man, this is a big pie." Here.
Yeah, it's smart too. You can't capture everybody.
Right.
You look at like the high stakes scene, and there are some certain people who like they spend all of their time trying to get others like shut out of the games, and basically policing situations, thinking that they're creating more opportunity and more like bounty for themselves. Right. You can't play all the games. When 3 or 4 games are running simultaneous to one another, it's because there's demand. And if you just try to get those other games shut down so that you can funnel more people your way, you're going to be the one that ends up losing. Like your game will die.
Yeah.
There will be an uprising at some point.
Yeah, but I mean, to the original point, I mean, I think, as you say, Isai wasn't after 05, 06, whichever it was, Isai, PokerStars and WPT were competitors.
Yeah.
I mean, WPT was in the States and EPT was in Europe.
Yeah, yeah.
But we did up until Black Friday, we had the US Poker Tour.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so they really were competitors. And I think that the WPT and Pliska and all those and that whole team acknowledging Isai as, one of the Mount Rushmore guys of the poker world is huge. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. He's one of the ones on the short list that I hope at some point does get the induction into the hall. I don't know. I've spoken about my opinion a few times about the Hall of Fame. The only thing that I'm certain of is that something needs to kind of give, and the floodgates need to open a little bit. Maybe a crack in the dam. You don't necessarily have to break it, but if we start letting in, a half dozen people for the next, call it 10 years, you're going to do just fine.
You won't have any losers in there.
No, of course not. Of course not. You did mention the WPT, so I'd be remiss to not mention our sponsor for the WSOP this summer, WPT Global. We are giving away a $330 Grand Slam ticket every day this week. All you have to do is head over to the Only Friends Podcast Twitter account, follow us, and comment below on the thread with your username and user ID. A winner will be selected each day at random. You can obviously only enter once, but once you enter that thread, you will be entered for every day thereafter. Lee, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, I just so appreciate being on here. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Just really enjoy it. And again, thank you for everything you do for poker. Jason Somerville once said that nobody loves poker more than Lee Jones does. and it might be true. And I just really appreciate you guys and everything you do for the game. So
wise word from Jason. Are you here for the duration of the series?
I have IRL.
Okay.
No, I'm out of here. I'm out of here tomorrow, but I will be back next month actually for Isai's induction.
Awesome.
Dinner.
Okay.
So yeah.
Let's touch base again. Maybe we'll get you guys back on the show. We can
enjoy that.
Further this conversation a little bit.
Before we get out of here, give a quick shout out to Coregasm Day 2 of the 1500 Six Max.
All right.
And my boy Leonard, August, with 12 left in the 10K stud. Let's go.
12K stud?
10K stud.
10K stud?
12 left.
12 left.
That's amazing.
God bless, man.
Let's go.
Pray for bro.
Old grandpa games.
On that note, we are out of here. We will be back tomorrow, 10:30 every day. Get it popping out there today. Later.
What else do we have to do?
Peace, everyone.